following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One.
Hello and welcome. Congratulations, you've made it through another week. It's the first Friday of May. I'm your host, Dave Schrader, and you're tuned in to Beyond the Darkness. Tonight, we've got a great guest joining us, one of our favorite guests over the years of doing the show. As a matter of fact, I think she was one of our very first guests doing this show. She's back with a brand new book, Guide to Psychic Protection. Rosemary Ellen Guiley is with us. Everyday people come in contact with negative forces, toxic individuals who radiate anger and hostility, these energy vampires who literally suck up the vital force of others, and those who have grudges and resentments. In addition, hostile spirits and entities look for ways to pester and attach to people, creating havoc in their lives and homes. Rosemary Ellen Guiley's new book, Guide to Psychic Protection, has everything you need to know about how psychic attack and psychic vampirism works, and how you can protect yourself from its ill effects. Rosemary has had extensive experience dealing with negative forces in her paranormal investigations and research. She's the best-selling author of more than 65 books, including Guide to the Dark Side of the Paranormal and Guide to Psychic Power. Rosemary, welcome back to the show.
Well, hi, Dave. It's great to be back on. And, this is such an important topic because everybody runs into these situations on a daily basis. We think that when you say terms like psychic attack and psychic vampirism, people automatically think, well, that has to involve spirits or entities. But actually, most of our difficulties come from toxic people. And I cover both in Psychic Protection. Oh, and by the way, you're right. I just wanted to add the comment. You're right about me being one of your first guests. I think I was number 3.
Right. Yeah, we had just met out at the UnivCon out at Penn State. And when all of a sudden we had an opportunity to launch the show, I want you to know it was using your name, Jason Hawes from Ghost Hunters, and John Zaffis. That is what gave the go-ahead to the people that ran the station, KLBB, at the time when Tim presented it and presented doing a paranormal show. He said, who are you going to talk to? And he said, well, we're going to talk to Jason Hawes, the lead investigator from Sci-Fi Channel, and his deal. We're also going to talk to Rosemary Ellen Guiley, who had written like 40 or 50 books on the paranormal and was one of the experts in the field, and John Zaffis, the nephew of Ed and Lorraine Warren and a demonologist. And he's like, geez, you've got those people lined up? All right, we'll let you go. And that's what started our career. So we always hold you guys in regards, and a tip of the hat and thanks to you, because had it not been for you guys agreeing to step forward and be our first guests, there may be no Darkness Radio. So again, thank you from the bottom of our heart.
And thank you, too, Dave, because you put a lot of good shows out there for a huge audience. You're one of the longest-running shows, I think, in the business, and that's thanks to content. So you've really done the field a great service.
Oh, I appreciate that. People think psychic vampirism, psychic attacks, and you think this kind of nefarious situation is going on. These people are setting out to take us down or setting out to leech us. Do most of these leeches and vampires even realize they're doing it, Rosemary, or is it something that's just part of a second nature to them?
It's a combination, and there are what I call unwitting psychic vampires, people who have some sort of innate ability to deplete the energy of other people around them, and they're not even aware of it, and they're often puzzled why people start avoiding them. And I've got some cases to cite in the book as well. And people who realize what's going on, and I've been around those people myself, it's never anything you can pin down. Like, is it their body language? Is it the way they look at you? Is it words they use? What goes on with these people? It's something in their energy field. They're like vacuums, and they just suck up the energy of people around them. And if you would suggest to any of these people that they're psychic vampires, they would be offended, hurt, puzzled. because they don't realize what they're doing. But yet we feel the effects. Other people feel the effects. Everybody's been around people who are very draining. You know, you spend a little bit of time with someone, and after a while your head hurts, or you feel foggy, or you just feel like suddenly you're limp, and you don't know why. And it could be that you've been around a psychic vampire. Then there are other people who deliberately do something. And I would say that in the workshops that I've done over the years on psychic protection, a good chunk of the participants who come do so because they are having trouble at work with people who are hostile to them, jealous. They do detrimental things. They feel that they radiate hostile energy. They feel adversely affected energetically by these individuals, but because they have to see them on a workaday basis, they have to interact with them. They're wondering what can they do to shield themselves from unfriendly energy. And, of course, people are in toxic relationships, too, with family, with friends. We often have so much emotionally invested with people that it's hard not to make ourselves vulnerable to the forces that they can exert on us.
Can I ask you something, Rosemary? You know, as you said, we've all come into contact with people like this, whether it's coworkers, friends, family, strangers. Why is it, though, it seems that they will come up and drain us of this essence, this life force, and leave you feeling battered and broken and exhausted? But when they walk away, they don't seem invigorated. As a matter of fact, you can sometimes watch them go from person to person, zapping them from their strength and energy and vitality as well. But the person, you know, I consider them human Eeyores. They're never happy. They never come out from under that cloud. And you would think that just by absorbing so much energy from others, that it would eventually lift their spirits, lift their energy level. Why do you think that is? I mean, that they continue to wallow in that dark void. Are they really working like a human black hole and they're just sucking the energy and there's really no payoff to it?
There's a number of things going on in these scenarios, and some of the psychic vampires, the unwitting ones, they do get buoyed. You know, they become increasingly brighter and more energetic the more they vacuum energy off other people. And there are others just like you've described. It seems like they take energy, but they don't seem to assimilate it very well. They just kind of limp along, and it's like somebody getting a blood transfusion and the blood is running out of them as soon as it's coming in. And in cases like that, they may very well have some sort of attachment, like an entity or spirit attachment, that is draining the energy off them as fast as it's coming in. And that could account for some of that. Rather than the spirits looking around to attach to new victims, they've got a pipeline going with the one they're on, and it becomes a transfer of energy. So sometimes those individuals don't realize what's going on with them as well. They don't understand why they're always depressed or just sort of chronically ill with a lot of low-grade things, or why they just never feel good. They're always trying to feel good, but they never quite make it. And I suspect that that's the reason why in many of those cases.
Do you think it's important, too, for people that go to the hospital? You know, we see that a lot of people that will go in with something, you know, pretty mundane, it can really turn quickly on them, and they seem to fail very, very fast. Are there things we should do if we have somebody that's in a prone position in the hospital? Should we be using crystals and energy or anything to kind of change up that, so that if there are spirits that remain in that room, or just the negativity of the hospital itself and all the death and illness that takes place there, to kind of numb that so that this person has an actual chance to heal?
There are some topical remedies for sure, and things like black stones like hematite and black agate, onyx are good absorbers of negative energy. And you can always give someone in a hospital a little bracelet, a hematite bracelet, or some stones to keep around that help to absorb that energy. Hospitals, while they're a place of healing, can sometimes be a place of just boomeranging problems, not just from a contagious disease perspective, but energetically as well, because many people who are in agony, desperation, and even in stages of dying, that's where they're going to be, of course. Our first line of defense, however, which is where we should be acting for ourselves and where we can help other people, is with the aura, that envelope of energy that surrounds every person. Every person has an aura. People who have opened up their clairvoyant ability can see the aura, which has different colors in it. And that's really our natural barrier against anything negativity. And it functions like a spiritual immune system. Just like the body is constantly fighting off all kinds of bacteria and viruses on a normal basis, the aura protects us from unwanted energy. And the average person has a pretty good buffer against negativity. We might be temporarily affected by something energetically, but we're able to recover from it, just like we would recover from a common cold. But people who are physically depleted, such as with accident or illness, trauma, their aura can be weakened as well. And to a clairvoyant, this appears as jagged edges instead of smooth edges. The aura should actually be sort of like an egg of energy around you that becomes finer and finer as it goes off into space. And there may be holes in it or rips or tears that make someone more vulnerable to the invasion of negative energy. And so what a person can do with someone who's in the hospital is to send them healing energy, where we visualize that energy going into the person's aura and filling in whatever gaps or jagged edges or tears there are. It should be a radiant white or gold white. And what I've also recommended in the book for people to add an extra layer of protection is to visualize violet light underneath that. Violet light right on top of the body, followed by the white and the gold light, which is an extra layer of armor that helps to repel things coming in.
That brings up an interesting point, if I could ask. If you take a powerful enough magnet and rub it against a paper clip, and then put the magnet away, that paper clip, in effect, becomes magnetized, and you can lift up other, items with it. If I'm in constant contact with people that are a negative source of energy, are they, and we're living in an electromagnetic force ourselves, our aura is that deal. By coming into contact with lots of negativity, does that start to pollute or demagnetize us, or maybe even magnetize us to draw more of negative people towards us because we're kind of allowing that into our system?
Well, we can certainly be affected without realizing it. And this is what I find with people who are in energy-draining workplace situations. They're on a daily basis during the work week. They're constantly subjected to something that erodes them. And over enough period of time, that can have a debilitating effect on people. And I've got some cases that address that in Guide to Psychic Protection. So awareness is very important, and awareness of our energy field is very important. And there are things that we can do to amp up the energy field through breathing and visualization, using the breath to pump some extra energy into the aura and even extend it further out around us. There are body postures that we can use to close off our energy circuits that would be sort of like the intake valves for potential negativity. And there are ways to avert negativity, especially if it comes through the eyes of a hostile person, to divert or deflect that energy around us instead of coming into us. So awareness is a good chunk of the issue. And one of the things that I seek to do in Guide to Psychic Protection is to establish that base of awareness, that here's how we're being affected, whether we realize it or not, when these things are going on. And once you become aware of that, here are defensive measures that you can take. And if you practice these energetic defenses on a daily basis, such as in a few minutes of meditation, you build up your aura like going to a psychic gym. It's kind of a spiritual muscle building sort of thing. So it automatically then turns more of this energy away, so that it doesn't even have a chance to impact you.
I've got, so many times that we've come in contact, and you and I have been a part of large groups when we've gone to conferences, and there are 200, 300, 400, 500 people there. And it's funny because, when you're talking in front of the large groups, you can feel very energized by that crowd. I mean, like bonkers. I feel like I've had 5 Monster Energy drinks, and then one person can come near you afterwards, and in an instant, it flushes away. If you kind of have these weak spots in your aura because you haven't known enough to strengthen them and kind of posture them, will that end up causing major damage for you in the long run? If people are still on the fence about the whole metaphysical aspect of auras and these energy patterns, what can we do to show them that, try this, do this, and if it doesn't work, no harm, no foul. It's not like we're asking you to swallow or ingest dangerous medications and chemicals. You're just doing this. But is that kind of the way it is? You get that chink in the armor and you are forever weakened until you start to fix that and shore it back up?
I think cases where people are chronically adversely affected, and yes, there have been cases on record where people have actually contracted fatal conditions or illnesses when they've been subjected to prolonged and sustained attacks, and I do believe that is possible, but not likely to happen. Most likely we're going to be temporarily affected, and when we have the awareness of what's going on, we can recover much more quickly. Now, anytime we engage with other people, whether it's on a one-to-one basis or with a crowd, like you were talking about, speaking in front of an audience, we've opened up our aura so that we can interact with those people. And when you're talking to a large group of people and they're enthusiastic about what you're saying and they're interested in you, there is a flow of energy back and forth, a collective flow from the audience to you and a flow from you out to the audience. And that openness is going to remain for a while afterwards. Same thing happens in paranormal investigation. If you're going to be a good investigator, you kind of have to open yourself up psychically so that you can see what's going on in an environment. And you have to be a little more careful about shutting down your energy centers. And what I do, one of the remedies that I give in the book is something that I've done for years, is I visualize a series of shutters up and down my body, like window blinds or wooden shutters.
Sure.
And when I want to close off a lot of those conduits of energy, I just visualize, and I do it in my mind, like there's a string or a lever that pulls all the shutters down so that my energy field now is a little more closed off. And that can help restore an energetic balance so that you're not in a constant state of giving out, and making yourself more vulnerable. We all have had these experiences of the killjoy, the one person who comes along with a badass energy field and manages to put a dent in ours. We can usually recover from situations where people run into trouble. It's where they're subjected to something on an ongoing basis, sort of like Chinese water torture. It may not seem a lot at any one time, but over a period of time, it starts to mount up and mount up and mount up. And that's when people then can be seriously debilitated. Sometimes we have to take care of ourselves out in public because there's a lot of energy boomeranging around public places wherever there are large numbers of people, like a concert, a game, a stadium, a lecture hall, a shopping mall even, or even crowded streets in a big city. There's a lot of energy boomeranging around. And the more aware we are of the bubble around us and keeping that bubble of protection around us, and it doesn't hurt to carry an amulet or two. I have a big discussion on the use of amulets and how to charge them up energetically as well. They certainly add some help to the mix.
By having that kind of damage done to your aura and to your soul field, or however people want to refer to it, can that attract malevolent spirits and energies? Do they see that as a crack in the eggshell, and it's easier for them to get in and through?
It certainly is, Dave. It's very difficult for a hostile spirit to break through a normal, healthy aura. If you are well-balanced and healthy, everybody's going to have ups and downs energetically, but by and large, you're going to keep hostility at bay from having a significant impact on you. But when you become depleted, and you're subjected, for example, to a chronically negative field of energy, this is going to impact you emotionally, spiritually, and even physically. And so the more debilitated we become on all fronts, the easier it is for something hostile then to wiggle through our defenses and to make an attachment then that exacerbates the situation, because hostile entities and spirits, a lot of them are like parasites, and they're not going to out and out possess you because they don't want you to even know they're there so that you're going to get rid of them. They're going to be a little more subtle. They're going to attach to the aura and just kind of draw off your energy force, and you might feel just kind of chronically depleted or upset or depressed. Things are just kind of out of whack. Maybe you're more vulnerable to minor infections, things like that. And you won't even realize that you've got some kind of drain going on your energy. So there are a lot of attachments like that, where the spirits really kind of try and hide themselves because they're getting something from you and they don't want you to know it. There are certainly more hostile forces that go for the big bang. You know, they want to make an inroad. They're going to create as much problem as they can because that's part of their agenda. They're going to torment you. And some of them are also seeking to possess people in varying degrees, mentally possess you, spiritually, even physically.
All right, guys, dealing with a psychic vampire sucks. But do you know what sucks even more? Forgetting your mom on Mother's Day. That's right. So if you've got a special mom, you've got that special person in your life, and you want to get them something amazing, remember, Mother's Day is almost here. Sunday, May 13th. Have you gotten your special moms in your life anything yet? I know that a lot of people forget, or they go the last minute and then they're sitting there kicking themselves, or you get something and then you forget, oh, you know what? I didn't get something for Grandma. I didn't get something for my wife, my partner, the mother of my children. Well, it's time you change that, and we've got the idea for you here. You can't go wrong with flowers. Women will tell you that. Our friends will tell you that. And friends of the show from youflowers.com has a fantastic deal right now for Beyond the Darkness listeners. If you go to FromYouFlowers.com/beyond, that's FromYouFlowers.com/beyond, you can send 1 dozen mixed roses for just $19.99. Boom! $19.99. 1 dozen mixed roses. Or, if you need to really make an impression, upgrade to 2 mixed dozen roses and add a free vase for just $10 more. Yeah, you heard that right. So for $30, you get 2 mixed dozen of roses and a free vase. That's $29.99 for a big arrangement of 24 roses and free vase delivered in time for the mother of all holidays. From youflowers.com /beyond. That's FromYouFlowers.com/beyond. I'm going to go with 2 dozen flowers myself and the free vase, 1 for my beautiful wife and 1 for my mom who's passed, but we keep her urn right there in our center place of our home. This will be in honor of her and my wife. And they guarantee the freshness and on-time delivery. But order today. Supplies are limited, and they are going to sell out. FromYouFlowers. That's FromYouFlowers.com/beyond, and take advantage of that special 2 dozen mixed roses and a vase, only $29.99. Make sure that you let that special someone in your life, your mom, your best friend, your aunt, your grandmother, whoever meant something to you, let them know that they still mean something to you and that they've made a difference. Send them the gift of flowers. Rosemary Ellen Guiley, our guest. And again, we're going to have a link up to Rosemary's website. We're going to have a link up to the book, Guide to Psychic Protection, and you can find that by going to darknessradio.com and click on our Killer Deals link. It'll take you into our Amazon page where we've collected all of the great books that you hear featured on this show, all in one place, so you can find it there. And when you click on Rosemary's name, you'll be able to see all of the amazing books. She's got over 65 on the paranormal that you can look at and sort through, pick out your favorite topics. What are you interested in? She's got it there to talk to you about. So go check it out. That'll be on our Killer Deals link at darknessradio.com. Rosemary, we're talking about all these different aspects of this this kind of energy field that we feel amongst us. Do you think that we have a lot of blockages that are just natural blockages? And are those caused by traumatic events, fights? Is that what keeps us from feeling connected to people once in a while? Because we've just kind of got that muck and crap and mire part of our energy that we share with people all the time.
The body's energy field, especially the emotional body, does retain a lot of things. And certainly the effects or scars from trauma and upsets and unhappiness can lodge in our energy field. For example, when energy healers look at the field of a person that they're treating, many of them can see places in the aura where there's what we call old baggage, old wounds, that have left kind of energetic scar tissue, and they can affect us. It can be an effect that's kind of a low-level chronic thing. Depending upon what that scar tissue is, it could relate to our ability to establish good relationships with people, to make ourselves emotionally vulnerable, so that in such a positive way that we can give ourselves emotionally as well as receive emotionally. It could, some of these scar tissue areas, of course, can relate to abuse that we've suffered, traumatic experiences that leveled a great shock on us physically or emotionally. These sorts of things linger in the energy field, which is composed of different bodies. And energetically, we're usually concerned with 7 primary bodies or layers to the energy field. The energy field actually extends way, way out into etheric space, and it becomes finer and finer as it goes out. But the closer it is to the body, the more defined it is. And the 4 principal ones that affect us the most are the etheric body, which is where physicality is related, and sometimes illness and disease will show up in the etheric body before it affects the physical. And if we've had some sort of physical issue, there might be scar tissue then in the etheric body. The mental body is not only our thoughts, but our creativity, our ability to vision, to have dreams and goals and aspirations. And, Dave, so many people feel cut off there. They feel like something has happened to them that trampled their dreams, made it impossible for them to achieve their goals. And this can create a tremendous issue in the energy field. The emotional body, of course, is very important because that's really how we relate to everything in life. Things impact us emotionally first before they impact us often in other ways. And then there's the spiritual body, and that is so important. If we're going to have a healthy aura, we have to have a healthy spiritual body. We have to have some connection to the transcendent, to the divine. And that's going to come through your religion, through your spiritual beliefs, your concepts of everything that is. It could be abstract. It could relate very much to the religion you were raised up in, or it can relate to, your ideas of the afterlife, spiritual helpers like angels, your concepts of God or the divine. It's important to have some sort of spiritual connection. All of those things then have a bearing on how strong our aura is and how resilient it is for either deflecting and warding off unwanted energy or recovering from something that has been able to impact us.
It's interesting to me too, right? When, you're talking about all of this and you realize just how many layers there are to us. We just think of our physical form and we forget that there's an emotional, spiritual, and energetic field that is a part of us. And I've had a lot of people ask in the past, we hear about disease and weird things, or sometimes not even full-on disease, but symptoms of disease that doctors can't put their finger on. Do you think that there's any chance that we are bringing forward from past lives remnants, reflections, residual hauntings, if you will, of emotional or physical distress that we've had in the past? And can that be identified in our energy field and removed cleanly?
Well, it certainly can. And in fact, there's been quite a bit of literature that's built up in recent decades in terms of past life therapy. And there are psychologists and psychiatrists who will take in consideration of past lives in dealing with patients. Edgar Cayce, of course, the great trance medium of America, talked about this all the time, the influence of past lives in the present. There have been so many cases where illnesses, injuries, even emotional mindsets and wounds can, under therapeutic regression, be shown to have past life components. It's like we're carrying some sort of energetic or spiritual DNA with us into another lifetime. And sometimes being aware of this enables a person to address situations and even treat them emotionally in a way that it alleviates the effects of those conditions. Many, many cases on record. So it is something to consider if people suspect that they might have deep, deep roots that they can't fully explain in this lifetime, deep, deep roots to issues or problems. There may be past life connections to look at.
And if that's the case, how do we start to educate ourselves or, weed through the possibilities of what it is that's really affecting us?
Well, sometimes it is quite a tangle, and there aren't easy answers that are readily apparent and easy solutions as well. And sometimes things, you have to look at points of origin, like how long has this condition been going on and these symptoms and, the effects. Sometimes they can be traced to something very recent or to a particular person that someone has started having a relationship with in some way. And then a treatment plan can be put into place, and it might be multi-layered in terms of the use of topical remedies in the home environment as well as energetic remedies with the body's energy field. And sometimes it's a lot more complicated. And this could be the case if there is an entity attachment. Entity attachments can go from lifetime to lifetime, too. And these entanglements may take a while to sort out. I've always recommended to people that they look for natural remedies first before they consider supernatural problems. If something, if some of the simpler remedies don't seem to have an effect, then it's time to probe more deeply. And with I would say a rare number of individuals, it may take quite a while to sort something out to see what the real picture is. There are many cases that I have consulted with individuals, and I have recommended taking a look at past lives to see what's going on there because of the way they've described their situations.
That's something to even think about, right? These times when you're feeling so down, it may not even be you. It may be the person that you're with that's dealing with issues in their energy field. So again, working in that vampiric way. So it is important for you to learn to just start grounding and shielding yourself, to give yourself that step up so that you're not as vulnerable to these accidental or purposeful attacks, I guess.
Well, that's very true. And we have literally cords of energy between us and other people. And these cords of energy, depending upon the nature of the relationship, they can be very strong. And they become conduits, two-way conduits. We've all had situations where we intuitively know what someone is thinking or what they're feeling, even when they're at a distance, and that's your energy cord in operation. Certainly, they're going to be the strongest in family. Your spouses, partners, your blood relatives, the people you're closest to, but they can also be very strong in other kinds of relationships. And if the other person has some sort of hostile motive against you, or harbors ill feelings, or is one of these unwitting psychic vampires, if we have an open energy cord with them that's really strong, that can impact us as well. So, as I mentioned earlier, awareness is one of the first things to get, just so you know energetically what's going on around you all the time. And then you can take steps to protect yourself against unwanted intrusions and also outflows of energy that you may not be aware of. You're aware of the effects of it, but you're not aware of the outflow itself.
All right, we have to take a break because it's time for Theater of the Mind, talking about spirit attachments, and then we'll be back more with Rosemary Ellen Guiley here on Beyond the Darkness. It's time again for our descent into the darkives in this week's Theater of the Mind. Turned Away, the very scary real-life situation of Philip Gellner. My story begins about 3 years ago. I would reluctantly attend local metaphysical events and expos with my wife as a way to show her support for her passion. I personally was not a believer in any of it, but it meant something to her, and it seemed like a very small price to pay to attend and keep my wife happy. After a few months, I acquiesced to my wife and allowed her to set up a mediumship reading for me. We approached the practitioner, and after a few brief pleasantries with my wife, she turned to shake my hand. When we touched hands, she popped her head backwards like she'd been punched, and then she let go of my hand immediately and informed my wife that she would not be able to do this reading. She suddenly felt very ill. Thinking nothing of it, we said our goodbyes and moved on. We tried again with another medium a few weeks later at a local Mind, Body, Spirit expo near our home, and this time the medium elected not to do a reading, clumsily insisting she was very booked and couldn't accommodate our request. I found this strange as I looked down on her table and saw that the sign-up sheet for readings, it was filled with holes all throughout her schedule. Seemed to me there was plenty of times that were still available, but whatever. Another day, another $50 saved. It wasn't until the third time we attempted to get a reading that I finally became incensed at the attitude of these supposed women of the light, as she called herself. She seemed disgusted by my request, and her face displayed a look like she was smelling something rotten. We walked off. My wife was utterly dismayed and could not wrap her head around this string of strange rejections. I spun on my heel and headed back to ask why the woman of the light was so dismissive and quick to push us on past. My wife followed closely behind, silently begging me not to confront the woman. "Hey, Esmeralda," I called out. "What's with the brush off? Why so rude? And what's up with the pinched face like you're smelling something foul?" I questioned. She bristled at my short and curt questioning, and I think became even more offended by me calling her Esmeralda. She informed me her name was Chastity. Of course it was. And that if I really wanted to know, she would tell me. I insisted on some kind of logical explanation. That is when she looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You have a very dark attachment, and I'm not willing to make a connection with you or with it." This response caught me off guard. "What the hell do you mean I have a dark attachment?" I barked. Man, you could have heard a pin drop. It seemed everyone within 100 feet of us stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to us. She shot me a very dirty glance for embarrassing her, and that pissed me off even more. She hushed me. Why was she embarrassed? I was the one shoved aside for some load of crap explanation. Then she looked me dead in the eyes. Let me guess. Short-tempered, always exhausted, no patience, and constant headaches. My wife and I were caught by the frankness of her answer, and we nodded. She then turned her gaze to my wife, and he wakes up from a lot of nightmares. Again, we nodded simultaneously. You have an attachment, and it goes way back. It's big, dark, and very deeply rooted, she informed me, and with that, and a wave of her hand to dismiss us, she turned her back and sent us on our way. We were dumbfounded. I shook it off, or tried to, and went on a mini tirade to my wife about the fakery of this whole thing and told her in no uncertain terms I would not be attending these waste-of-time events with her again. To my surprise, she agreed that would be a good idea. And with that, our conversation was over. A few weeks later, we suffered a power outage at home due to heavy rains and storms moving through our area. We were living by tea light candles, and I grabbed one to make my way to the bathroom one night. I set it on the counter and went about my business. After relieving myself, I approached the sink to wash my hands, and after giving them a good once-over with soap and water, I turned my attention to the mirror, where I was shocked and horrified to see a massive, looming figure standing behind and above me. It was wispy and smoke-like, but was a fully formed humanoid figure. I stood there waiting for my eyes to adjust to the light and trying to calm my nerves. I was obviously having a low-light hallucination. That had to be what I was witnessing. That's when it shot me a menacing, toothy grin and slowly leaned over my shoulder and looked itself and me in our eyes. I could swear I could feel its hands on my shoulders. My breath was labored and panicked. I started to collect my thoughts, with the terror level in me steadily climbing. This was no dream. This was no hallucination. I could feel its hot breath on my neck, its claw-like hands on my shoulders, and I opened my mouth to scream. It lifted its crooked hand to its face, and with a single finger pressed to its mouth, it hissed, "Shh." And then I heard a low, rumbly laugh in my ear. Then it all went black. I hit the floor of my bathroom. I had passed out. I never could bring myself to tell my wife what happened, and I refused to look into mirrors in low light or candlelight. Every night as I lay in bed, the instant the lights go out, I squeeze my eyes closed and will not open them until morning light. All I can think is, what is this? And why is it with me? I'm too terrified to tell anyone or ask for help, since the 3 times I tried to speak to someone with abilities, I was just quickly shunned. What does this mean? Not only for the rest of my life, but in my afterlife. I'm left wondering, in what version of heaven will I ever be allowed to enter, knowing that attached to me, there's a very dark passenger.
The hit true crime series, Murder Made Me Famous, is now on Podcast One, showcasing some of the most notorious crimes imaginable, including Scott Peterson, Jodi Arias, Ted Bundy, and more. See how murder made them famous. New episodes starting every Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, as well as PodcastOne.com and the Podcast One app. And check out the new season of Murder Made Me Famous, starting Saturday, April 14th on the Reels channel.
Hey, this is Chris Jericho inviting you to the first ever rock and wrestling Rager at Sea. Picture this: rock and roll, wrestling, comedy, live podcasting, all on the open ocean from October 27th to the 31st, 2018, from Miami to Nassau. I'm bringing Hall of Fame wrestlers, some of the greatest rock and roll bands on the planet, and putting the first wrestling ring on a cruise ship ever. Don't be a stupid idiot. Make the list. Check us out at ChrisJerichoCruise.com.
Beyond the darkness.
Welcome back. This is the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness. Our guest today, Rosemary Ellen Guiley. Her new book, Guide to Psychic Protection. Learning a lot here, Rosemary. I mean, there's, you start thinking about it and you think about all of these times where you just start feeling drained, you start feeling sick, you start feeling like there's something, with you, but kind of out of your control. And I know a lot of us have felt that, whether we want to believe in the supernatural, the metaphysical, or whatever, but this starts to make a lot of sense to why we may be feeling the way we feel or reacting the way we react. I don't know about you, Rosemary, but there's been times where all of a sudden I will have anger or depression, anxiety that just washes over me, that feels like it's outside of me. As we've all gotten angry. We know what that feels like. We've all gotten depressed because of things that are going on. We know what that feels like. We've all had anxiety at some point in our life. We know what that feels like. But what I'm talking about are these ones that seem to, they're like pushed on me. I feel like they're there. I can feel them, but they don't originate from me. And that's been destructive in a lot of people's lives. A lot of people have ended up doing horrific things, and at the end stand there outside of themselves wondering where it came from. How did that happen? You even hear about it in some of these murder cases, Rosemary, that we've covered in our true crime shows, where on the outside, the person at the end is like, I don't know what happened. I just lost it. And there was this energy that kind of washed over. I felt like I was outside watching this take place. Do you think that is, in a sense, kind of this psychic attachment that's taking place, these energies that are manipulating us? Or is it just psychological dissociative situations that your mind kind of breaks from what you're doing because of the brutality or the ugliness of the action?
Well, both of those explanations are correct, and either one may be in play depending upon the individual and the circumstances. For example, I have been of the opinion for a long time that certain serial murderers are under the influence of an attached malevolent spirit, and it's the voice in the head they talk about, or the voice that comes through the dog, like Son of Sam. It's externalized in some way to them, but it is the action of a malevolent spirit that's urging them in certain directions. I'm not of the opinion that spirits can make us do something we don't want to do, but they can certainly act upon our weaknesses and vulnerabilities and influence us in those ways, and also inclinations that we may have. The inner psychological factor, outside events, the impact of environments and other people can affect us in positive or negative ways, and if a negative effect triggers perhaps one of these scar tissue issues in the energy field, it may feel like something that is external because it gets awakened in some way. It's something that's there and then starts to play back to us. And if it's something that we haven't recognized or come to terms with, it may feel like an external force to us. But I also want to add onto that so many of these situations, as ones I mentioned earlier, can become so complex, involve so many factors that it takes a while to sort them all out in terms of how a particular person is going to react to the forces around them.
When you're doing your work and you go out there and meet a lot of people, you've taught a lot of workshops, you've done this, can you sense if there is an actual spirit attached to the people, or in that case, are there sometimes multiple spiritual energies attached to one person?
There can be multiple spirits attached. And I do remember attending a workshop on spirit releasement once where the presenter talked about cases where some people had so many spirits attached to them, it was hard to sort them all out. And, of course, a lot of them were very minor entities, but they were all in a mix. Now, if you eliminate the food that these spirits feed on, they're going to fall off of their own accord, a lot of them. For example, if you've got a mindset that's woe is me, I'm always the victim, then that could attract some spirit attachments to you that feed off that energy, feed off the negativity of it, and want to amplify that feeling in you so that it's a constant food source. And if you're able to get your inner ship in order and you stop feeling like a victim, and you see yourself more as a successful person, a happy and balanced person, and for many people these are not overnight changes, of course, then you've eliminated the food source for these entities and they're going to go off on their own and look for something else. In other cases, there does have to be an explicit spirit removal, and that's what exorcists do in the cases of the real malevolent demonic forces, and spirit releasers do with some of the other kinds of spirits that attach to people. So I've interviewed spirit releasers who believe that we all have at least some attachments. And some of them are not necessarily negative. They might be benign in a way, spirits that like us and want to tag along with us and help us out in some way. But my feeling is that usually those spirits don't take advantage of your life force. They're present for you if you recognize them and wish to call upon them, but they're not going to attach a hose to your life force.
Sitting there with a big straw sucking out your energy, huh?
It's interesting to say that because clairvoyants who see an affected energy field, like an attachment, they will often see things actually as a visual image in the energy field where the spirit has made its inroad. And a straw is very common. It's a very common image, and the entity has managed to poke through a hole or poke a hole and attach a tube like a straw. Barbs and hooks are other images that are frequently seen in affected energy fields.
Well, see, there I'm joking around, and it turns out we're onto something.
Hit a nail on the head. In fact, there was one case, and this actually goes back to the Golden Dawn days when Aleister Crowley was in the Golden Dawn, and he was in a big fight over control with Samuel Mathers over who was going to run the Golden Dawn. And they got engaged in psychic warfare, which takes place on the astral plane. And in psychic warfare, there are thought forms that are created and hostile entities that are called up to attack the other person. And ideally, you want to do dream invasion so that they can't sleep. They've got nightmares going. You want to attack the energy field. And one of the entities that Mathers described that he felt that Crowley sent against him was an ugly form that had a barb in its tongue that acted like a straw. And so the barb did the pricking on the aura, and then it turned into like a straw that sucked off his life force. Now, in later years, Crowley eventually lost the battle. He was expelled from the Golden Dawn, but Mathers and his wife, they felt that he had been adversely affected to the point where it debilitated him for the rest of his life. And some of these psychic warfare things, they do get to be quite serious.
Kind of sending these beings at one another, that puts you on a whole different level of this kind of psychic attack, though. I mean, that's something like you've really got to be working hard at it. Have there been people that have summoned and sent these creatures out and they get unhooked, unhinged? So Dave Schrader sends something to Rosemary, it's hooked on her, she figures it out, gets it kicked out, but then does that leave it still kind of existing and looking for a new symbiote host?
Usually they bounce back, they literally boomerang back to the sender and act out their intention, the intention that was given them, acted out on the sender. And this is why these things are really very risky. I describe in Guide to Psychic Power some of the experiences of Dion Fortune, who wrote really one of the classic works on, it's called Psychic Self-Defense, still a classic today. She wrote it back in the 30s. She was involved in the Golden Dawn with the occultists of her day and participated in some of these astral battles. Now, that kind of thought form sending and entity sending takes a great deal of skill. And individuals who dabble in it think they're going to get an enemy and they're going to call upon supernatural forces to do it, do so at an extreme risk, because if you don't do it right, it's going to come back on you and wreak havoc upon you. It just doesn't, kind of bounce around out there in the ethers. And Fortune had an experience like that herself, where she harbored, it wasn't a pitched psychic battle as much as it was she harbored a great deal of anger and resentment toward an individual that she felt had done her wrong. And it built to such a level that she literally manifested a thought form, a negative thought form that took the appearance of a wolf. And it was attached to her by one of these astral cords that I was talking about. And it started showing up at night and climbing up on her bed. And she knew that if she did not do something to get rid of this projected thought form, which was a manifestation of her own anger, that she was going to have some serious trouble. So she went to her spiritual teacher, and he told her that, well, you have to reabsorb that energy. You have to reabsorb that anger, and you have to neutralize it. You have to get rid of it, and that's what she did. She had to let go of her anger and resentment. She was, she wanted to even the score. And sometimes you're just not going to be able to do that. But if you harbor the feeling that you've been done wrong and someday you're going to even the score, that may have more damage upon you than the other person. And so it was quite an undertaking for her to assimilate all this anger back into her and then neutralize it. But it was quite a lesson. And I think that we create thought forms all the time, happy ones, neutral ones, negative ones, on a daily basis. And most of these don't have the energy or the focus to do anything. They just kind of dissipate off into etheric space. But when they are concentrated and prolonged, they start to take on a form. And I know I can remember some years ago, Dave, we did a show on tulpas and thought forms. And a lot of these we can generate ourselves without even realizing it.
That's scary to realize just how powerful we really are as beings and what we're capable of. And just how dangerous. I mean, it's like the old adage of the monkey's paw, with every wish there comes a curse. And if you don't know and really have a full handle and understanding of what you're doing, you can be wreaking havoc on others, your loved ones, and yourself because of the boomerang effect of all of this.
And it really is true. Now, the most common form of cursing is not where somebody goes to a sorcerer or they do a spell to harm someone. It's called ill-wishing, and it's just harboring bad thoughts about someone. And if, here again, it's the same thing. If those bad thoughts are strong enough and sustained enough, and we've all met people who sort of, they allow themselves to be taken over with an anger against someone. You know, they've got to get back in some way. They've got to even a score. And sometimes it's understandable how people may feel that way. But that energy then, it's ill-wishing against another person. And sometimes that ill-wishing can find its target. If the other person is vulnerable in some way, it'll find a home there. And if it doesn't, that ill-wishing is going to come right back on the sender and act out in some way, maybe not in the way we would like revenge against an enemy, so to speak, but it's going to adversely affect us. So we live in a sea of energy. Energy's going in different directions, coming at us, going out from us all the time. And the more aware we are of this sea of energy and what we're sending out and perceiving what we get back, we can automatically deflect the more negative stuff coming in. And we also raise our spiritual vibration. I have a discussion in Guide to Psychic Protection about the energy of thought forms and what they look like on the astral plane and how they go into the spiritual realm to the benefit of the person who is generating them, and contrast that with what negative thought forms look like and how that energy curls back on the sender.
Check it out. You've got to read the book. Keep up with that. I want to mention for all of our listeners, I've been talking about it for a couple of weeks now. This is a really important message. If any of the messages I've given on the show from our sponsors need to resonate, this is the one that needs to get through to you right now. I've been working with Zipa, and this is a company that's going to help you change your life. If you are a snorer, you've probably pushed a lot of people out of your life that you don't even realize. And yeah, you've got it under control. You know what to do. You're taking care of it. Your friends and family will love you no matter what. Well, yeah, they'll love you, but they're going to avoid you like the plague. And that loved one, they may not want to join you either. How about if you turn that around and start bringing the happiness back to the bedroom instead of the sense of dread and anxiety that you spread with that horrible chainsaw through glass bottles noise that you make or your spouse makes? It's time to take control of your life again, get the sleep you deserve, and save your life. Zipa's committed to helping to save millions of lives of people with undiagnosed sleep apnea. They've got a device that will help you. It is 100% effective. That's my thoughts on it. I've seen people use this, and as a matter of fact, they did a news program on NBC Nightly News, and you can check this out on their website at zyppah.com. They tested all of these so-called snoring devices. Only one stood up to all of the tests and was found effective, and that's Zipa. Zipa's comfortable because it's custom molded to your mouth. The cost on it, too, is less than $100, and it's guaranteed to work. It's been cleared by the FDA as safe and effective. You heard that. The FDA has cleared it as safe and effective, and there's a 90-day money-back guarantee. If you are not satisfied for any reason, just return the product and you get a full refund. They have a zero-hassle money-back guarantee. How can you go wrong? If you can turn your life around and start bringing the happy back to your bedroom, start feeling better, sleeping and knowing that the people that love you and you love them can sleep better, knowing that you're getting a full, restful night of sleep, that you're not putting yourself in health's danger anymore, you're able to fix the issues that you've got. That will start to reflect, and like ripples in a pond, will make huge changes in your life and in the lives of the people around you and love you. Zipa improves relationships, and they get couples sleeping in the same bed again. That's a key benefit of using Zipa to eliminate snoring, is being able to sleep next to the person you love in the same bed without disturbing their sleep. So whether you're the snorer or you are straddled with the snorer and you're stuck with them, this is the thing to get. This is the perfect gift item. You got Mother's Day and Father's Day right around the corner. You could hold on to them then, but why wait? Get them now. And if you go to Zippah, zyppah.com, educate yourself on it. It just takes a few minutes. Please do it. You're worth it. Go check it out. And to help you out, because we stand behind this, we're going to take care of the shipping for you. Just use promo code DARKNESS to get free shipping. That's promo code DARKNESS and get it taken care of right now. Trust me when I tell you, we are very cautious with who we bring in as sponsors on this show. And this was something I knew would be life-changing, not just for my life, but for friends of mine and more. So check it out. If it's good enough for us, it's good enough for you. Stop waiting for it to just go away. Stop thinking things will change. They're not going to until you make this definitive decision and get your love life back, get your friends back, get your family feeling more comfortable with you and not worrying so much about your health. Order it now at zyppah.com. Use code DARKNESS for free shipping. One thing I was curious about as well, Rosemary, I know you've written books on haunted objects and talked extensively with John Zaffis, who has a museum of haunted objects and possessed possessions. You've also taught courses on psychic reading with psychometry, I believe it's called, where you hold something and you can pick up imagery and sometimes feeling senses from that. Is there a danger in doing that if you aren't learning to ground yourself properly and protect yourself?
There certainly is, Dave, and I think a lot of us in the paranormal field have seen examples of that where enthusiastic people have understandably jumped into the field. They're excited about investigating and coming into contact with dramatically haunted places or haunted objects, but they haven't prepared themselves energetically to have the proper buffers around them. And these are the most likely people to be adversely affected by something, simply because they don't have a sense of their boundaries and they don't have their boundaries in place. So it is important to know these things, to have that awareness, to be educated in this way, and to have put some energy into building up your energetic barrier. Psychic protection is not just about carrying an amulet or saying a prayer for protection. If you haven't done your spiritual homework, those things are not automatically going to do the job for you. They can certainly help. They add to an energy, but your best defense is going to be your own natural buffer. So people do need to be aware of the health of their energy field, and also how to open it up and how to close it off. And I've done many workshops over the years about how can we open ourselves, for paranormal investigators, how can we open ourselves up in especially a badly affected area so that we can do the investigation, know what's going on, without being adversely affected. And so there are ways to open yourself up in a protected way and then also to shut down. What happens in a lot of cases is after the thrill of an investigation, people don't shut down. And it is possible to pick up attachments that will go home with you. You're trailing energy behind you all over the place. And there are things that can ride those coattails. Some of them don't have enough staying power to last very long. They don't have much of an effect, or they just go away after a while. But every now and then something can go home with you that causes a lot of problems, or you can be adversely affected on site.
You know, everybody's in a rush too right now, Rosemary, if I can mention. Everybody wants to be empathic. They all want to develop these psychic and mediumistic skills, and they think just by opening themselves up to it and theorizing that they can close themselves down is good enough. But you and I have seen people that have tried to open up to the mediumship world, to the psychic realm, and many of these people that are from the light end up self-medicating with drugs or alcohol because they are not in a place of grounding. They are not in a place of strength, and they've allowed the things in without the ability to get the things out or detach from them. And that's been extremely destructive to a lot of people we know in the field.
Well, that's very true. And I contrast the situation here in America with England, for example. I do quite a bit of work in England, and in mediumistic circles in England, there's an emphasis on training yourself over a period of time. You typically join something called a circle, a development circle, or a home circle. You take a training course over time with experienced mediums that help you with these natural boundaries so that you don't have those issues. There are cases of people who do, as you mentioned, they open up too fast, and then they can't shut it off. They can with, they can learn how. There are remedies for that sort of thing, but initially they're kind of swamped and overwhelmed. There are rare individuals, and I know some myself, who are just born empathic and very open. They have very thin boundaries. They're very vulnerable, and they spend their life really working at keeping things out rather than letting things in, because if they start letting things in, they're in a tidal wave. And so it's kind of the opposite for those folks. But it's a matter of awareness. It comes right back down to awareness, doing things sensibly. Don't get ahead of yourself. The average person out there is not a meditator, doesn't know much about the aura. A few minutes of meditation every day, you don't have to be a yogi about it, and I've advocated this for years, will do wonders for your aura so that you always have that natural protection. Now, I'm often asked, Dave, what I do before I go into a badly haunted site in an investigation. And my answer is usually nothing or very little. I mean, I might, kind of visualize a little extra around me, but I've done my homework. I've done it for decades. And I'm not saying that I have an aura that's invincible, but I've built up my energetic defenses daily over years so that I don't have to think about it. It's there with me all the time. And stopping outside the door and saying a rushed prayer when you haven't done any spiritual homework may or may not do much good for you because you're not energetically connected to it. There are prayers that are wonderful. They have a thought-form power of their own collectively that has accumulated over thousands of years, hundreds of years. But if you're not energetically, emotionally, spiritually connected to that, you might as well read a grocery list for all the good it's going to do you. So,
is there something? If I could ask real quickly, I know a lot of people talk about harmonics and energy and raising your energy. Is there anything to, in your opinion, the magic of music? I have noticed, and especially recently, when trying to kind of fortify myself and re-strengthen, I've noticed that there are some forms of music that just listening to them makes me buzz. I mean, like a good contact high. It's not a bad thing. It's not an out of control thing, but it makes me feel strong. It makes me feel empowered. Is that because of the resonance harmonics of it affecting my energy field?
Oh, you've absolutely hit the nail on the head. Yes, sound and music have the ability to affect us on all levels of our being, not just emotionally, but mentally, spiritually, and physically. And sound is used in a lot of healing therapies because of the vibration that resonates with the vibration, the energetic vibrations of the body. And our sound health is another important aspect of the strength of our aura. I'm very disturbed at a lot of the negative music that's been so popular in recent years. The resonance, the actual resonance of it is very jagged and upsetting and kind of disorienting. The lyrics are pretty bad. The message of the songs are dark. They're about abuse and exploitation and self-aggrandizement. And people think that, hey, it's just music. It's not going to affect me, but it does. And the more you listen to certain kinds of music, the more you are going to be impacted. I've been a big fan in recent years of 432 hertz music. And I know there's a lot of controversy over whether or not 432 hertz is better than, most contemporary music. But I've experimented in workshops with using 432 hertz music, meditation music, as opposed to using, what are we normally on, 440 or 442, something like that. And people have a better response to the 432. So that's something to look at in terms of what kind of sounds are we bathing ourselves in on a daily basis. What's our sound diet? Because a bad sound diet is going to have an energetic effect on us as well.
That's really a really interesting aspect of that, because that sound diet, it's like I've always told people about, letting other people kind of change your manner, change your thought process, change your life, and let negativity in. It's not hitting the iceberg that sank the Titanic. It was letting in the water. And that's the way we are. If you're letting in the negativity, that's what's going to drown you. That's what's going to pull you down. If you're holding up and you're deflecting by using resonance and harmonics and music and things like that, that's empowering, it will make a difference. And I've noticed that in health-wise. I've recommended people a lot of times when they're telling me, Dave, you're very open about depression and anxiety. What do you do? And I say, usually, I'll weather the storm a little bit, but I start to surround myself in the music that makes me happy. And I notice that when I immerse myself, and I don't just sit there and listen, I sing it, I stomp it, I'll dance while I'm doing laundry and dishes and whatever, it changes the energy pattern and flow in me. And that's been a big part of why I think, I'm still here and these dark waves have not made me succumb to them, is because I keep trying to enlighten and fill myself with that energy.
Well, physically responding to music is a way of assimilating the vibration, too. And so moving to music and moving to sound helps us assimilate the effects of that sound.
All right. And now talking for people, too, that are out there and listening to the show and still not on the fence because they're not sure about the whole metaphysical angle, which cracks me up. All right. I mean, people love the paranormal. I can have you on to talk about demons and possessions, and they'll download this show like crazy and listen to the whole thing. You start getting into the metaphysical woo-woo, and they're like, this sounds like a bunch of tripe. And I'm always fascinated by that. I'm like, how can we have one without the other? If not knowing and understanding the energy, not knowing and understanding what's taking place, how can you believe in the rest of it? That's always been fascinating to me regarding the field of the paranormal and paranormal research.
Well, there is a disconnect there, and many people don't see any relationship between the two, but one is built upon the other. And without the metaphysical foundation, the paranormal is going to suffer for that. Now, some people can jump into the paranormal and they do their investigations, and they've never had a metaphysical thought in their head or concern. And it may be fine for them if it works for them and they don't have any issues and they're happy. You just figure that that's the energetic zone they're in. But for others, it becomes very important to know these things, understand them, if they're going to be well protected and also very effective. It all boils down to the individual because, and you've seen it yourself, Dave, that what barely ruffles one person is going to freak out somebody else because
right.
We all react differently to the stimuli around us. And that gets back to this question of awareness, this matter of awareness. You have to be aware of your energy and how it is being impacted by the people in the environment around you and how you, in turn, are impacting those factors.
You wrote a book back in February of 2016. Well, you released a book back then called The Art of Black Mirror Scrying. Psychomantiums, I think people have heard about it that way as well. But can you tell me, can you utilize these divination tools, these visualization tools, to see things that are attached to you? And should you engage them? Is there a danger in opening your eyes and looking into the eyes of that which is connected to you?
It's very difficult for people to see their own attachments. I think that first of all, people may not have the ability to perceive those levels, and in other individuals, there's a natural block to perceiving it as well. But one of the other things that I've advocated for many years, in addition to having a meditation practice and having some sort of spiritual underpinning in your life, is get some energetic training. One of the things that really helped me was when I started studying energy healing. Now, I had taken psychic development workshops, and I had been in development circles, and I'd worked with one-on-one with teachers over the years. But when I started studying energy healing, then a lot of things really opened up for me in terms of my awareness and my understanding. I had no intentions of being a professional healer. I just wanted to understand things energetically better. And so I took, I didn't take Reiki per se, but I took energy healing. It was very similar to Reiki. They're all fundamentally the same. They go by different names and have, variations in techniques. And that really opened up my clairvoyance to a different level where I could perceive things in more subtle ways. I learned how, in energy healing, you have to learn how to open yourself up and close yourself off so that you're not adversely affected. If you don't close yourself off, then if you're open all the time, you're just overwhelmed and drained. And so I've advocated that for other people. Reiki is probably the most popular and widespread energy healing system available. And an introductory Reiki course can teach you an awful lot about the energetics of the universe and can help you see the energy of the aura and the layers of it, and also how the energy field is impacted by external factors and internal factors. So it's a very valuable education to get that, and that sort of training in turn strengthens your own aura as well. This is one of the greatest assets that paranormal investigators could invest in, and a lot of them do. I would like to see more of them take that step.
I would too. I think that's an important aspect that a lot of people leave out. They're so diligent and willing to spend thousands upon thousands of dollars on equipment, but they're not willing to take the simple steps to protect themselves and perhaps the others that are part of their group as well. With this book, Rosemary, what are you really hoping people will walk away from now, with the idea on how to defend themselves? And will this book give them step-by-step ways on dealing with many different types of attachments and energy vampires?
What I want Guide to Psychic Protection to accomplish is making people aware of energetics, how we're impacted by things, and how we become vulnerable to certain influences. What exactly are the symptoms of psychic attack and psychic vampirism? What do we need to recognize at what stage? How do we keep ourselves energetically healthy all the time so we don't have to take defensive or remedial measures? And I do talk about both. I devote some time to the aura and the layers of the aura and how we can use our own energy fields for our betterment. I talk about other remedies like things that happen to us during dreams, amulets, scents, using environmental things to help cleanse an atmosphere that augment what literally comes out of you. So my goal is to raise awareness and to encourage people to take steps to shore up their own boundaries in ways that enable them just to become more fully functioning and realized, so that they don't have to be concerned about these things. They can automatically take care of them as they come up without a lot of upset in their lives.
It sounds great, and I hope people will take this and run with it, because you've got to make the changes, and you don't know that even if you're not a paranormal investigator, you just don't really realize what it is in your life could be having an impact and an effect. Whether it's that secondhand armoire that you got from a flea market, or Grandpa's recliner, or just the people in your life, or the people that your children are coming into contact with. We're all connected, and if you don't learn how to take care of these plugs, these lines, and your energy field, you're putting yourself in a lot of harm's way that just does not need to take place. Rosemary, thank you so much for joining us again and sharing your insights on this, and I hope people will heed the warnings and educate themselves.
Well, thank you very much, Dave, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about this and for being a conduit of information and learning for so many people.
It's always a pleasure. We will catch up with you again, I'm sure. What's your next project you've got in the hopper?
The next book that I'm working on, I've got several books coming out from other authors. I have a publishing company now for some years that has been growing quite rapidly. I'm working on two books that are anthologies myself. One is another anthology of UFO-related pieces, and one that I'm really excited about called Mysteries of the Afterlife, that deal with spirit communication, NDEs, our concepts of what happens to us after we die, the scientific research, and both of those will be out later this summer. By the middle of June, I will have out two more books, Chasing Bigfoot, Chasing the Elusive Pennsylvania Bigfoot, Cryptid from Another Reality by Paul Johnson, and Haunted Hills and Hollows, What Really Lurks in Greene County, Pennsylvania, which I've co-authored with Kevin Paul.
Fantastic. Well, get those authors in touch with me, Rosemary. We'll get them on and help promote their work and their research and studies, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you quite a bit more as all of these books roll out. Thanks again, Rosemary.
And thank you, Dave. Always a pleasure.
All right, that's it for this week. Be kind, be loving, be nice to one another. We'll be back again with you next week with brand new editions of the best in paranormal talk radio. This is Beyond the Darkness.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. The NRA will hear from President Trump today at its convention in Dallas. The AP's Jackie Quinn reports the president's address comes in the shadow of a national tragedy. The shootings that left 17 people dead at a high school in Florida.
Last year, when President Trump addressed the gun rights group, he declared the Democrats' assault on the Second Amendment had ended. This year, his speech follows February's massacre at Stoneman Douglas High School in Florida.
There's a report that federal investigators have monitored the source of phone calls involving President Trump's attorney, Michael Cohen. NBC is correcting its previous report, though, saying the feds were not listening to those calls. Hawaii's Kilauea volcano has been spewing lava, sending 1,500 residents running for their lives. People like Stephen Clapper.
I ran in, I grabbed the dogs, threw them in a crate, put them in the car, went in my room, just grabbed up an armload of clothes, and here we are.
He spoke to KHON-TV. I'm Rita Foley.